Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the evening interactive discussion that will be moderated by His Excellency the Honorable Yasar Yakis, former Minister of Turkey. Very happy that Ambassador Bassett is here as well, the current Ambassador of Pakistan to Germany. And a new guest who has arrived, I'd like to say a few words of introduction, Sarmat Hussain. Sarmat Hussain has three identities for me this evening. First of all, is one of my closest friends since I arrived here in Berlin about 10 years ago. Secondly, one of the most prominent members of the Pakistani diaspora here in Germany, very active in the German-Pakistani relationship. Thirdly, a prominent German coming to us this evening from the German Parliament, where in the German Parliament he's very active as well with a Pakistani Gesprächskreis, or a conversation group that meets on a regular basis to discuss also Pakistan. So Sarmat, I'm very happy to have you here. If you could all please maybe give a warm welcome to each of the panelists, and then Mr. Yakis will say a few words opening the panel. Welcome.
Okay. The title of the panel now is, Can Islam Survive in Europe? Well, of course, it will survive. It's not going to be eradicated one way or another. It will survive, but perhaps we will ask the question. His Excellency the Ambassador, in his brilliant expose, said that we cannot foresee how the integration will unfold. What we could discuss here is perhaps what are the possible scenarios in the future for the attitude of the European countries and European nations and European communities, European peoples to Islam. This is perhaps the subject that we can discuss. Otherwise, whether it can subsist, it's not the right question. So I would like to modify a little bit the title of our panel and ask, by beginning with Mr. Sarmat Hussain, what type of scenario do you see as the time unfolds for the integration or the existence of the Muslim societies in the European countries, to begin with Germany, that you know in an excellent manner? Mr. Hussain.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. And I have to apologize in advance because I have to leave in a couple of minutes because I have to give another presentation at another institution about immigration actually as well. And actually, the ambassador has already mentioned and said so many important things about the current issues here, so I do not want to repeat anything of his brilliant performance and presentation. And by the way, this is a great ambassador. It's not only my point of view. If you talk to other people of the Pakistani community, they will say the same. I don't want to flatter him because he's sitting next to me, otherwise he will slap me. But honestly, he's a great ambassador, and we are happy to have him here. So thank you, Ambassador, for. Coming back to the issue of Islam and multiculturalism and all these issues that are discussed here in the German media, in the German public, in the German Parliament, I slightly have a different point of view and attitude. I think Germany, after having lost the Second World War in 1945, I mean, we should not forget, Germany did not lose the war voluntarily. You know, it was not that by intention Germany wanted to lose the war. Of course, they had other intentions. And after having lost the war, there was no other option than becoming a very open, secular, liberal country. Our constitution is very liberal. It's probably one of the most liberal, open-minded, and progressive constitutions. The bilateral relations are very excellent. The ambassador has mentioned the foreign minister was here. A strategic dialogue was signed. The bilateral relations are very good, where Germany is giving development aid and other things. But having the ability to accept other cultures and other nations and other countries is still a big issue in Germany. I don't think Germans are ready to accept multiculturalism. They're not even ready to accept interculturalism, unfortunately, I have to tell you. And the most important thing about Germany is that we should not forget that this country is not necessarily a very cosmopolitan, a very open-minded and very tolerant country. This is definitely a society where racism still plays a big role. You don't feel it if you are in a very protected circle, like in a parliamentary or government field or in a diplomatic community where everything is very posh and everything is very smooth. You'd feel it more if you are in a very down-to-earth lower middle class or labor class family where you are offended on daily basis, where you have a lot of hostilities in achieving a proper decent job, where you have where you're facing a lot of offenses going to the authorities and getting working permit or any other things that you need from authorities. I think this country has a very long way to go. If you compare, I mean, I used to live in the US, I used to live in other countries. I have seen that these countries are much, much more welcoming and much, much more open vis-a-vis immigration, vis-a-vis other, to integrate and to assimilate other countries. This country is definitely not, because, once again, coming back to the issue of 1945, where Germany had lost the Second World War, we badly needed a working labor force, because the German labor force was simply not there. Germany lost a lot of manpower during the Second World War. We had still a lot of prisoners of war being in Russia, being in other countries. Millions of Germans were simply not existent. So we had to bring a lot of immigrants from Turkey, from Spain, from Italy, from Greece, from Portugal, who came here, but were already in the 50s and 60s when they came here. We always believed in Germany, these people will hopefully go back one day, and that's why we called them the Gastarbeiter, which means the guest worker. So we hope they will stay 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and then they will go back. But they didn't go back, unfortunately, for many Germans. They stayed. I mean, I have to say very honestly, also in my case, my father used to be a journalist. I'm sure that that was also not his intention to stay for such a long time here, and also probably many Germans were hoping that he will go back very soon. But nonetheless, we do not have that kind of culture of welcoming people from other countries and from other societies. This is definitely a very, very big issue. And when we realize that those people from Turkey and from other countries are staying here and are not going back, it became a huge problem for us here in Germany. We were not able, first of all, those people who came, for instance, from Turkey were not necessarily coming from Istanbul or from Izmir or from Ankara, and they were not necessarily from the educated class. They were more from the rural areas. And they came here. Of course, Germany did not need at that time engineers or medical doctors or whatever. They needed, labor force, and they brought all this labor force. So to expect from them being very integrated and being very assimilated is a very naive thing. That's not possible. If you come from the rural area, it's very, even Germans who are from the rural areas, for them it's very difficult sometimes to come to bigger cities and to integrate in a proper manner. So so that was a big mistake that happened at the very beginning, and that until today we have to admit that immigration, multiculturalism, as you all know, the German chancellor said multiculturalism has failed badly, and that will never going to work in Germany. We had a Bavarian prime minister who said that I will shoot until my last bullet is shot against multiculturalism. That will never happen in Germany. That kind of things. Why are politicians saying something like that? I mean, if this country would be a very welcoming country and a very pro-immigration country, no politician would say that. No one ever would say that in Canada or in the US. That's only possible here because they do know that that kind of sentiment is still perceived and still felt in their constituencies or in the majority, predominantly in the German public. And if you do make hostile remarks and hostile comments against immigrants and immigration, that is, very much welcomed by the majority of the German population. See what happened when some very smart Germans wrote books about immigration and about Islam and about the threat of Islam here in Germany. 80% of the Germans were in favor of it. And there was a German president who said Islam is a part of Germany, and he was heavily criticized by nearly 70-75% of the German population. So you still see the sentiment here is very, very different than in countries where immigration has become an integral part of the society. Islam definitely is a threat for Germans. What I heard from different local authorities here is that quite often Muslims are perceived, unfortunately still, Muslims are perceived as the enemy within. They are living in the country, but nobody can trust them because you do not know what is going on in their mind, and are they sleeping cells or are they going to commit any terrorist attacks. If you see a Muslim with a beer, immediately he's checked in the airport or in the railway station. So there still is a very, very negative sentiment vis-a-vis Muslims, and we have to admit that. I mean, even, I don't know if you heard about the fact that 9 Turkish people were killed in the last 10, 12 years by a German right-wing neo-Nazi group. And even there, because I was having the chance to see the police files, it became very obvious how extremely racist German police is still thinking. It was clearly written in the files that this murder could not be committed by a German because that was such a brutal murder. It must have been a mafia gang, or it must have been another Turkish man who has killed him because of honor killing or whatever. This is still a very, very big issue. We are not addressing it quite openly and quite frankly because, once again, after having lost the Second World War, we were actually very embarrassed about talking about racism in Germany and about talking about the National Socialism, the Holocaust, whatever. But still, this is a very big issue. You still see that Germans hardly mingle amicable with Muslims or with other immigrants. It's different with the younger generation. Definitely have to see that the younger generation is much, much more open, much, much more cosmopolitan. But the people who are a little bit older, like 40, 50, 60, whatever, or in my age even, I'm 40 now, for them it's still a big issue to accept that Germany has become an open country. Whereas we do, as you all know, we do need qualified immigrants. We do need specially trained people from other countries. Germany is lacking more than 400,000 engineers, for instance. Therefore, it would have been good to attract people here. But because of this hostile atmosphere and this hostile attitude that still exists in this country, it's very, very difficult to attract qualified labor force to Germany. Because a lot of people, of course, know how the atmosphere is here, and then they prefer to go to Canada or to the US. So in the last sentence that I would like to say is that does Islam has the chance to subsist? Well, I think if it would be up to the Germans, then definitely no. But at the end of the day, Islam will survive here because we already have 4 million people with Islamic belief. Out of them, 2 million do have the German nationality. And I think German politicians also have no other choice than changing their attitude vis-a-vis Muslims because they are also important voters now. And if a political party wants to win the next federal elections, they also have to count on the Muslim electoral base.
In this case, because you cannot expel a German citizen from the citizenship because he is Muslim, then they will stay there. But I know that you want to leave us. Before His Excellency the Ambassador contributes with his wisdom to this discussion, I would like to turn to the audience and see whether they have any question to be directed to you. And after that, we will release you and we will continue with His Excellency to receive other questions and perhaps with his valuable contribution. Now, I would like to turn to the audience and ask them to feel free to raise any question or make comments. Yes, please.
Good evening. My name is Camilla Marocco. I'm from Italy and I'm currently studying in Finland. And I confess that I'm pretty new dealing with multiculturalism as such, but my studies about regionalism, border studies, and culture have always been rotating around this. So your discourse has reminded me a lot of an article I read by Gerard Delanty about the fact that the East is moving westward, and in that case it referred mostly to the consequences of the fall of the Berlin Wall and the end of the Cold War. But I would like to see that, to point out a similarity. We are experiencing a period which is globalization, and this crisis has even emphasized the effects. We have seen new mass migrations, new ways of migration, and now we see the other. I think it's really true. As Europeans, we see it in the Muslim community. And then what is a community? They're so multifaceted, we cannot make definitely a generalization out of all the migrants of Muslim religion coming to Europe. So I was thinking, as Delanty says, I agree, we must embrace this diversity. We must acknowledge it. There is no way. I think Islam will survive, of course. What can we do? You cannot shoot all the Muslims. It would be completely insane. And people, in the end, learn to coexist when they have some liaison, some link. I think that identity is a very strong link, and that we Europeans now feel still a bit, under siege, because it's no justification, but because of transition which has been going on in the Eastern countries during the 90s, because of this crisis, because globalization affects us all. So this is a partial explanation. I see different levels. You said the state, the politicians should implement certain measures to help the understanding, to at least help the acknowledgement, because the situation must be acknowledged as such, and we all agree about this. But I also think that in this moment, because of globalization and Europeanization processes, nation states are in such confusion, they must cede these competencies to a supranational organization, but still they want to retain something. All this work about nationalism, it was the most powerful ideology of the last 200 years. What can we do with that? They will not give it up. The people on the other side, they cannot be generalized, and you have either very open people, very liberal people, and you have stereotypes, you have prejudices, and it's so easy to manipulate, so to say, collect the ranks, of people in times of crisis, just by saying multiculturalism has failed, or in countries like Italy, where I come from, trying to agitate the ghost of the other, the different, the threat. So what can be at what level is it possible to intervene? I have faith in people. I see the change, and I think that stronger than identity is only the need. If I migrate, I'm a migrant myself, and I don't think I will go away from Finland after 2 years, because I live there, because I start relations to people, I have my places, my friends. I build networks. It's impossible. No human being.
Could you perhaps wind up so that we give chance to others also to express their.
So I see this chance at the level of civil society, because man cannot live without building networks. Do you think it will definitely help, or do you think it's not enough? Thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's a very, very valuable comment. The fact of matter is that what disturbs me, where I do see hope is, of course, the educated class, and the young people in Germany. For them, I have a lot of hope, and I think they will be much, much more different than their generations before. But I think where Germans are more open are, for instance, immigrations or people from other countries like Spain, Italy, Portugal, Greece. But without being cynical, but I think they prefer if those countries are from the Christian community, if they are not Muslims. I mean, being a Turk or being from the Muslim society, I think this is still a very, very big issue here, I mean, I remember when I was a small child and I was born here in Germany, I remember that I heard German classmates saying, and they were 5 or 6 years old, that my parents do not want any Turk being in my house, because they are very dangerous, or they are whatever, they are not very hygienic. So this still was existing 25 years ago or 30 years ago. Of course, it's very difficult to generalize, and you shouldn't generalize, but what disturbs me a lot in Germany is in the mass media, in the tabloids, a picture is portrayed of immigration and of Muslims, which is so negative, unfortunately. I mean, Muslims and Islam as such is so diverse. I mean, putting them all in such a negative limelight is so unfortunate, and we have to admit that if you see, for instance, that the German intelligence and the German security forces are now observing a lot of mosques and seeing who is going in the mosque. You even do not dare to go to mosques because you feel that if you would go to a mosque and the German intelligence would see you there, then your whole professional life would be ruined. This is very, very unfortunate, and I have to tell that very openly. Unfortunately, I do not have to be very diplomatic because, fortunately, I'm not an ambassador. Our ambassador has to be a little bit more diplomatic on that, but I can tell you very openly, this is a very big issue here, and that disturbs me a lot in Germany. And I hope that also Muslims in Germany would become a little bit more active in promoting their own, their own ideas and their own values and their own, that kind of hostile attitude would somehow disappear one day. That would be my hope. I'm so sorry I have to leave, but it was great to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sarmat, for your honesty and your openness. I think it was more realism than optimism, but I think that's very important that we really have that balance, and we appreciate the honest sharing that you had. Mr. Yakis, it's back. And we have 2 seats here also, if anyone would like to come to the front.
Yes. The back seaters, please. Mr. Ambassador, would you like to add anything before we give again the floor to the questions?
It is more interesting to hear from
Okay, fine. I now turn again to the audience.
Okay, so let's take maybe a bunch of very short questions, just because I think it'd be interesting to hear where we're at, different perspectives, different voices.
So that we can.
So I'd ask everyone, if we have this 30-second rule at ICD, so I think if we can all respect that, it'd be great. Just be proactive. I want to hear as many voices and perspectives as we can.
I'm from Detroit, Michigan. And if someone had told me that I would spend 2/3 of my life in Germany, I would have said they were crazy when I was 17 or 18 years old. So I've been here. I came here as a U.S. soldier in 1967.
30 seconds.
30 seconds.
Already.
All right.
Okay,
What? No, you're counting fast. All right. So I have 5 grandchildren and 4 children, 3 sons and 1 daughter. 1 son is in America, but the rest of my family, except for his 2 children, are here in Germany.
Question.
And they're all brown-skinned people. All right? They have more or less integrated themselves into society and think of themselves as Germans. Just one little anecdote, 15 seconds. My son has 2 passports. In fact, all of my children have 2 passports. They have an American passport and a German passport. When my son, the youngest, and you know him, the youngest, the 13-year-old Malik, when he got his American passport, it was amazing to see the transformation. He immediately went from being a German to an American. And I think there was a reason behind it. And I haven't discussed it with him because it's such a critical issue. But I think he felt more at home, although he's never been to the States, with that image than with the reality of living here in Germany. Living in Kreuzberg, which is a wonderful place to live, in terms of the multicultural aspect. We all live together, different political attitudes and different, 134 different nationalities there. But I just wanted to say that with my young son, within him right now, You understand? It's this search for his identity, and a lot of it has to do with being uncomfortable to some extent here in Germany.
Thank you. Of course, the two societies cannot be compared. America is a country which is composed of different cultures, so they have to welcome the other people adherent of other religions, other ethnics, and etc. Britain, that His Excellency mentioned as another example, Britain, because of the imperial past, has this tradition. German, again, for reasons that His Excellency explained, and also Mr. Hussein, when he was addressing, has mentioned, does not have this historical past. So we cannot expect, perhaps, from Germans to be exactly to be the same way as the Americans and British. So other comparisons should be more valid, perhaps. Now let's turn to other questions, if there are any.
Who would like to go next? Don't be shy.
Well, I am from Turkey, and I was born, and I'm Muslim. As a Muslim, I'm born. The point is, even this, I don't remember his name.
Hussein.
He meant that Islamist has to be more active. The people who has Islamic background, sorry, Islamist may be wrong word. The people who believes in Islam has to be more active. And the question in this case, how active they could be, because in the center of the Islam is the human. Mankind is at the center of the Islam. The 5 rules, what we are following, is all about to controlling the mental and body values of the human and the social life in this case. Just 5 rules. Do you think it could be a beginning with the making a definition of it, to open a window, maybe open a point of view to understand it? Because the 5 rules are for us. 5 rules we know, and mostly we live like that, and that have advantages.
Thank you. I actually had a question for the person who just left, but just like put it as an open question.
No, we may comment on it. Perhaps His Excellency may also wish to comment on this.
A few days ago, like 4 days ago, I watched the James Bond, the last movie, like Skyfall, and there was a very interesting statement that was said toward the end by the antagonist to James Bond. He said, "Aren't you tired of all this running and jumping and hiding and killing?" And so the idea I'm driving home here is that aren't we really tired of this question where will Islam survive or not? Of course, Islam is going to survive, whether we like it or not. The question I think we should be debating here is how can it survive peacefully and in coexistence with other religions? I think that's, if we are discussing that question, that would be more informative. And thank you.
First of all, let me discuss these issues as honestly as possible. Islam has, in essence, 2 dimensions. One is Islam, which is practiced, and it's a relationship between a Muslim and his Allah. It's more personal, private relationship. But Islam, unlike as religion is seen in the West, is not only private. It also has its collective dimension. And here, the bone of contention lies, in my view. Because, for example, in Islam, interest is forbidden. Our whole Islamic economic system is based on non-interest economy. Now, interest obviously, again, is a kind open to interpretations because Muslim is not a monolithic group. Even in Islam, we have different shades. And if you ask, there are different interpretations of Islam from Shiite to Sunni, and within Sunni you have Hanbalis, you have
Hanafi.
Hanafis, you have Shafis, you have so many sects, So, and there are different interpretations of Islam. But having said that, it goes without saying that Islam has two dimensions. One is private and one is public. And you cannot separate Islam from your collective, your organized, your nationally, your locally, your regionally organized life. That is the problem. But I for one, am sure that Islam is to survive in Europe. And because there are so many common grounds between Islam and other religions, other faiths, that I do not see any problem as to why Islam cannot coexist with the West. Now, today we are sitting in an environment where the whole international order is based on Western values. What are those Western values? Equality, liberalism, freedom of expression, freedom of association. All those values are inherent to Islam. But as you know, because of globalization, the East is now coming up, rising. We do not know how things will unfold, whether this international system based on Western values will be acceptable to the rising East. What will happen? Let's say China, becomes a superpower 30, 40 years down the road. And they will try to have an international order based on their own values and systems. Then where will Europe stand? Or the Western world will stand? It is all, a changing world. And we do not know what will happen 50 years, 60 years hence. And if East is on the rise, and I do not wish for a moment that West is not, is declining. But these are the hard realities of international relations or the world. So we will see many changes, many transformations. But at the end of the day, it is important that we focus on our commonalities, on points of convergence rather than focusing on divergences. We do have differences. There is no question about that. But as human beings, as my friend very rightly said, that first we are humans. And as human beings, I think we can find out modus vivendi, common grounds to build an international order or a system which accommodates our concerns, our faiths, our values. So I for one would look for those commonalities rather than focusing on differences. How can it survive? I think it will survive. It's a process. And you need not be making conscious efforts because Islam is surviving for the last 1400 years in difficult circumstances, and it will continue to survive. But as Muslims in the West, I think we have an additional responsibility to show through our character, both individually and collectively, that we are a peaceful people. We believe in the values which are human values in nature, and there is no conflict when it comes to promoting values such as liberty, freedom of expression, peace, and so on and so forth. So I do not see any threat to Islam or to Muslims per se, because we have common grounds, and the way the world is now being, transforming itself, I think we have a space for all of us. But there are bigger challenges which we need to focus, and those will continue to be providing currents and undercurrents for confrontation as well. I'm not saying that we will have an absolutely peaceful world, there will be problems, challenges, confrontations, conflicts, but at the end of the day, the life is like that. And we will continue to be surviving in one way or another.
definitely, because in the past there were other civilizations, very high civilization in Mesopotamia, 5,000 years before Christ, and the Egyptian 3,000 years before Christ, Romans 2,000 years ago, but there is no sign of their prominence any longer. So all this civilization will rise and will remain at the top and then will decline. This is how it's going to happen. Most probably for Islam, thinking in the Abrahamic terms, perhaps, in the future, if the scenario that Your Excellency has referred to, China rising as a culture, then perhaps Abrahamic religion will become together one block against the others, because especially in Islam, all Abrahamic religions are worshipped. The saints of the Christianity and Judaism are also venered. So this is perhaps one superiority of Islam, that it recognizes all the saints of the other Abrahamic religions as their own, that the others do not have, because at that time Islam did not exist. So this is one point that has to be added, perhaps, to your very valuable observations.
No,
Yes,
let me just one point.
Yes, please.
No, here I totally agree with His Excellency, because Islam does not complete, our faith is incomplete unless we have full faith in Jesus Christ, Moses, because they are part of our faith. And we are not Muslims if we do not respect them, show them veneration as we do to Prophet Muhammad. So that is part and parcel of our faith. On the other hand, the problem with Islam, unfortunately, is that the institution of ijtihad and ijma, they are two important facets of Islam, that you try to, because Quran, the message in Quran is in generalities. It lays down principles. That's why we strongly believe that it is relevant to all times to come, because it allows us to interpret Islam according to our present day requirements. And the frameworks which have been provided in the Quran itself, unfortunately, Muslims over the centuries have not followed those two paths. Ijtihad, which means that you interpret Islam, jurisprudence, and according to your present day requirements, that has been lost somewhere, because the Muslim world as a whole is going through an intellectual inertia, unfortunately, for the last 400, 500 years. So we have left that institution somewhere. That's why fundamentalism, is still the buzzword. On the other hand, ijma, which is another institution which provides solutions to problems, Islamic problems, that has also disappeared somewhere because of intra-Islamic problems and conflicts. So if Islam is to survive, again coming to your question, I think it is important for the Muslim world as a whole to revive these two institutions, so that to make Islam contemporary. Unfortunately, we as Muslims have lost the game in the sense that Islam is not seen as contemporary. And it's a big challenge, intellectual challenge for us, to focus on science and technology, to focus on academic things, intellectual things, to make Islam contemporary. And that is a challenge not for the Western world, but for us. And I think we can do it, and the young generation, the coming generations, provides us a great hope in that context.
So to reopen the Bab Ijtihad, let's say the door of jurisprudence has to be opened again.
I have one very serious question. So what is the most important? Which religion do I belong to? Which ethnicity do I belong to? Or am I a human being? Don't forget that there are not just Catholics, atheists, Muslims. There are many, many other religions. So please respect religions, respect ethnicity, and see the human beings. I think that the most important thing that we can do is to have an impact to our community, our contribution that we give, not my religion, not my ethnicity, but what I do for the community. I think this is important.
So it contradicts a little bit what Mr. Hussein said. When Germans receive other cultures, if this other culture comes from the Christian origin, then it is acceptable. But if this other culture comes from a non-Christian origin, then it is less acceptable. This is what Mr. Hussein was saying. I have friends among Christians. No, I appreciate it. This is to confirm what you say.
Yes, it's about the state and it's about personal
Yes.
opinion. So I have friends among atheists, among Muslims, among Christian, you know. Even some people pray to Buddha. Okay, that's their choice. But I wonder what kind of people are there.
First, we are human beings, and this has to be given priority over everything else. I think there's this dialogue, because you could continue it outside also, but make your comment as short as possible so that we can go to
first of all, I'm not Christian, I'm Muslim. That's okay. The other thing, the other point, my point, well, can I talk, please? Yeah, my point was not when can we see Islam surviving, like being peaceful. That's not was my point. My point was, can we talk about how can survive, be accepted in coexistence with other religions? That's what I said.
Thank you very much. Could you give the microphone to the lady behind?
Thank you very much. I really do hope that I did not forget my point that I actually want to make. So, I introduced myself earlier. I come from Bosnia and Herzegovina originally. Yes. And I have one question. I was raised in the Islamic culture in Bosnia and Herzegovina, in Sarajevo, and especially in Sarajevo, and I think also in Turkey. In our Islamic culture, it is not connected or not common that women have the coverage. So my question is, since you, Your Excellency, were saying that Islam should really try to become contemporary, and since you were also saying that the common values that we have and share with Europe might help us to really bridge the cultures, the question is, there is a very contemporary fact, which is feminism, of course, and I see Islam also not understood in this aspect, meaning that the women and who have become more rights, of course, in the century, are seeing also Islam as a threat because of the fact or the beliefs or the misunderstanding that the woman in Islam who is covered is being repressed, suppressed, etc. So maybe you could give your opinion on this point. Thank you very much.
No, I think it's a very relevant comment and a relevant question. The problem is that we often confuse Islam with or Islamic injunctions with cultural traditions. Now, women wearing niqab or burqa or hijab, this may be part of cultures as well, as we have in our Oriental cultures. For example, if you go to Afghanistan or some areas in Pakistan, women there have been wearing hijab perhaps before the arrival of Islam there. Similarly, even after the arrival of Islam, even if you go to rural areas in Punjab, their women do not cover their heads or they're not wearing burqa because that is not part of their culture. So sometimes, and it's a tension which is going on in Islam as to and in Muslim world as a whole, as to how to synchronize our cultural traditions with Islamic injunctions. Now, in Islam itself, there are different interpretations about women. But I can tell you, whatever I studied, Islam, the place of women in Islam, I think, is very clear. And there is simply no inequality, discrimination between male and female in Islam. Yes, it is correct that we have different roles in a society. Now, according to our faith, whosoever created us knows us far better than we know ourselves. And that is part of our faith. And Allah, the God, has given us, He has given us an outline as to how our society should look like, how we can organize ourselves better, and that is our part of our faith. And in Islam, without creating any inequality between male and female, Islam does create different spheres of activities and work. That does not mean for a moment that women cannot really participate in activities outside households. Because, as I said, unfortunately, the institutions of ijtihad and ijtima, those have lost their relevance in Islam. If we revive those institutions, we can always come up with interpretations of Islam to accommodate contemporary requirements. That is the missing link in my view. Otherwise, I do not see any problem in Islam about women, about minorities, because Quran does provide broad principles about these things, and it is now for us to accommodate or to interpret or to make new laws, jurisprudence, according to our present day requirements. So I think you have raised a valid question, but to answer this question, we have to see local cultures, but Islam as a whole does not prohibit women, in my view, from participating in actual life, in active life. But obviously, in order to create a stable society, Islam does differentiate between different spheres of activities. And even in the Western world, if you see, how women, there are social issues. If you allow me to be undiplomatic, there are issues in the Western world where social issues which are creating problems for life, collective life, individual life here as well. You see the divorce rate in the Western world. It's very, very high. Broken marriages. And Islam, in a way, tries to prevent that through different methods. And then, in Islam, the way Islam respects women, that is unprecedented. And when Islam says that, paradise is under the feet of mother, that puts mother, in such a pedestal. You cannot match that in any other faith or religion. So we have our own values, which are very much compatible with liberal values as well. But at the same time, we have differences. And you can build solid foundations while acknowledging those differences. Because if you brush them under the carpet that there are no differences, I think we are fooling ourselves. We do have differences, but we have to acknowledge, understand the common grounds and build mutual understandings on the basis of those common grounds, rather than keeping ourselves, stuck in a warp, which is which kind of, makes our interaction more difficult.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. The sticking point or the crucial point of what you said, of course, is again to reopen this Babu Ijtihad, the door of jurisprudence or interpretation. Yes, I think this gentleman is in order.
We're starting.
Thank you very much. Once again, my name is Artur and I'm from Latvia. So I just wanted to make a short comment regarding Darnell's anecdote. It really touched me because I am Russian minority from Latvia, and actually I have nothing to do with Russia. I'm Latvian citizen, but I have this image in my head, and nothing can be changed on political or sociological level or theological level if it would be about Orthodox Christianity against Catholicism. So can it be so that actually problem of multiculturalism or people living together is absolutely individual thing, and no governmental policies or no civic society minority group activism can change something if you have already image of historical homeland in your head, or opposite, you want to be part of society where you born and grew up, so then you cannot be changed and put from this path also. Can it be so that it's absolutely individual, not sociological or political or religious problem?
Hi, my name is Emily Rothschild, and I'm an American doctoral student. I'm from the University of Pennsylvania, but I live now in Hamburg studying Islam and integration. My question for you is, so often we hear about integration programs reaching the already integrated Muslim immigrants, so people who are more inclined to be out in society, interacting, going to youth programs. But in Hamburg, we have the legacy of the Al-Quds Moschee, which is where the Hamburg cell met and were some of the perpetrators of 9/11. So in our city, we question how to target immigrants who haven't necessarily integrated, some of the more conservative immigrants. And I was just wondering if you had any strategies for how to do that.
In Pakistan?
No, in Germany.
In Germany.
My name is Sean. I'm also American, and my question is specifically out of an interest in how we're talking about ijtihad at the moment. And I know that, like you're saying, ijtihad has been relatively closed today. And I'm very interested that you're saying that you would be supportive of the idea of trying to open it up again. So basically, I want to know, what do you think could be done to try and open it up again? And my understanding of why it's become more closed is that religious education is not what it used to be hundreds of years ago and not as big of a priority. But what can be done to try and make it more normal to use ijtihad?
I'm Fatima Al-Blushi from Saudi Arabia, a PhD student. It's just a comment. Ijtihad, it's not closed, but as Muslims, we don't have a unified authority. Yeah, just a clarification.
As for Germany is concerned, I am not really the right person to give any advice, because I represent Pakistan, and I think, Don Fight, you are the person to respond to this question. I do not really know what Germany can do, but do not forget, this 9/11 did not occur in a vacuum. It has to be seen in a context. Gulf countries, Saudi Arabia, other countries, Muslim countries, dictatorships, monarchies, and lack of freedom, lack of democracy in the Islamic world as a whole, and then Americans, the American government supporting those dictatorships. So all these, provide context to even 9/11, I would say. And then Al-Qaeda, whether you agree with it or not, Palestinian problem, problems involving other Muslim countries as a whole. So all these, have to be put in a context. And obviously, we do have our fundamentalists as Christians have theirs. But those small, minuscule, should not, other people from other groups should not generalize those things, because that, I think, is counterproductive. It is important that we should deal with those fundamentalists who do not allow other views to coexist in an intelligent manner, through intellectual exercises, through, there are different platforms available for this, but it's a long-term exercise. And first of all, we need to be very clear as to what we intend to do, and how, what values are more important for all of us. Because when you become condescending in your outlook, in your approach, then obviously Muslims do not see that as very constructive. So we have to accept that all of us are equal. We do have problems, difficulties, but we can find a common ground to build on. But as for Germany is concerned, I do not know as to what Germany should be doing and what they can do in order to promote a more kind of, to deal with these extremist elements. When you mentioned about ijtihad, and this lady from Saudi Arabia said that ijtihad is not, the door of ijtihad is not closed, but since we do not have a unified authority, that's why ijtihad is not taking place. So that is actually the point which I was trying to make. Ijtihad, the institution of ijtihad is no more there. And how we can revive that, it's $1 million question. Because the Islamic world is divided, and there is no effort to plug the knowledge deficit in Islam, unfortunately. Most of us, we study in Western universities. There are how many universities in the Islamic world which you can really rank, as universities. So we haven't really spent in education in our respective countries, despite the fact that there is no dearth of wealth in the Muslim world. But that is being wasted on building palaces, on building other stuff which is not really, do not have any meaning. So it's a problem I do not know. I do not have an answer as to how the institution of ijtihad can be revived, or the institution of ijma can be revived, because the Muslim world is divided, and divided along ideological lines, Shiites, Sunnis, and then you have other offshoots, So it's a very difficult task, and I do not really have an answer, I will be honest with you. And I wish we had an answer to this question.
Well, every question does not have an answer in the world, so there are other questions also that do not have an answer. So we will continue to live without an answer, without a precise answer to this question also. I would like to thank you very much, Your Excellency, and I would like also to thank all those who were present here by their presence, who contributed to the panel by their presence and by their intervention. And I would like, first of all, to you to join me to thank to His Excellency by applauding.